listening to the Yoga for Balance podcast. I'm your host, Heather Pugh. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start out this week's episode by taking a nice deep breath. Inhale, fill your lungs all the way to the top and the sides. Open mouth, exhale, sigh, and let it out. All right. Smile and notice how you already feel more relaxed. In this week's episode, I'm speaking with a mentor of mine, San Diego-based yoga teacher Rex Villena. Rex and I talk about that spark that transforms your personal yoga practice into a teaching one, plus the continual shift you'll keep experiencing. We ask the question, are you ever ready to teach yoga? And how to overcome that fear of not being good enough to teach. And yet how to have humility in your teaching and to stay humble. How mimicry may be the best way to start your yoga teaching path. And what to focus on when finding your voice as a teacher. We discuss yin yoga and how you may already be practicing it in your yoga flow, whether or not you're actually practicing a yin class. And the subtle things that will show up when you begin to slow down. We touch on the topic of being in partnership with another yoga teacher, how Rex, his fiance, is also a yoga teacher, what the day-to-day can look like for them, and what it's like to have your partner being in a similar position. Finally, we touch on yoga to overcome severe challenges in life, such as alcoholism or an eating disorder, and how, as a teacher, you may be able to serve those communities. And then finally, why it's okay to not have a quick fix, to not have the one answer to the question of finding balance. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that you do too. A big thanks to everyone who has subscribed so far and who's taken the time to leave a star rating and review for the Yoga for Balance podcast. Your support is genuinely appreciated. Enjoy this week's episode. Hi, this week on the Yoga for Balance podcast, I'm here with Rex Villena of San Diego, California. Welcome, Rex.
Hello.
I'm so happy to have you on the show. Rex has been a teacher of mine for years. He is the one that brought me to the climbing gym that I now teach in. It was your class. I think it was a 9 p.m. class, which I was just reading about on your blog, this amazing yin-yang meditation class. And I'm just so thankful that class brought me to you, brought me to that space. And I'm humbled and so thankful you're here.
I'm thankful to be here as well, and thinking back to that class, that was the first class I ever taught and had for my own, and so that class really has like a special place in my heart. And I think about the regulars that would come in, you, Juan, Angel, and they're teachers now, and Juan's about to be a teacher now, so it's so cool to see it come full circle like that.
Yeah, I think it seems to start there. And we were, chatting about that a little earlier about this transformation and journey from just being a student, rolling out your mat, showing up to class, starting to see things transform for yourself. And then that spark happening and it turning from it being a personal practice to potentially a passion-filled career and what you do every day. So I'd love you to just kind of talk about that for you, how that happened for you.
Yeah, I started practicing yoga 5-6 years ago, maybe now. And the first class I ever took was a Jen Richardson class at Spirit Yoga, and ended up being my home studio for today. I still consider it my home studio, and I never looked back. There was something about it that when I went in, I was ready for, and something missing in my life that sparked out of me in that class that I didn't say like after this class I'm gonna go back tomorrow. The next day I woke up and I'm like, I'm gonna go practice yoga. The next day I said, I'm gonna practice some more yoga. And some days after a class, like, I'm gonna practice again the next class, and it just kept rolling until someone said I should become a teacher. So it's kind of how that happened. And so the transformation from being a practitioner to a teacher, even now, as many classes I've taught, I still feel like it's changing, and there hasn't been like a stop of like the shift. Yeah, like I think the last time I talked to a good friend, John Oldrow, I told him like, I'm not even sure. He said like, I don't even know if we're teaching yoga. And I said, I don't know if I'm even ready to teach yoga. And we were discussing a teacher training, like doing a teacher training together. And yeah, I think it just keeps evolving. And even in the way he said it in that time, even him, he's been teaching for like 15 years. And I think that as you teach yoga, it just continues to evolve and change. And like, I think one of the trappings and the struggles that maybe we enjoy almost masochistically is like this feeling of like, are we good enough? Is it good enough? Are we rising? Are we ascending? And it only takes like a magical moment in a class or a connection that's really deep and heartfelt in someone's eyes after a class or during a class that's like, oh shit, yeah, it changed again. And then, but I think that's like the answer to that. It always consistently changes. And I would say I'm like the same person I was before I practiced and taught yoga. It's that my purpose is different. It feels different. And it always changes that way.
So going back to that thought of, am I good enough to teach even now in this moment? And I as a student of yours, can attest to the fact that you definitely are an amazing yoga teacher. I love your classes. I love your style. That's why I wanted you here on the podcast. But, for anyone listening that is either a new teacher or a current teacher, an experienced teacher, or thinking of becoming a teacher that has that same voice, I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. I'll never know as much as the teacher that I love and practice with or that I've admired. What would you say to them?
I would say me too. I would say me too. I would say that I'm with you in that space and that it's always changing and you meet it. There's a point in your teaching where like, oh shit, I got it. And that is to be relished and to be experienced, and it has its place. And then you go back into like the questioning yourself and second guessing yourself. And I think that, today's age, we're it seems very easy to be like, don't listen to that voice. Don't give in. I think I agree with don't give in to the voice of like, don't give up. But there's something there, I think, that, allows you to be, it's a natural humility. It's really the mark of a good teacher, to be able to kind of reflect on your classes or reflect on the way that you're approaching people and in all aspects of your life, and whether it's like teaching yoga or like with your mom, like you pull from the most visceral places of your life to inspire you as a teacher. And if it's not affecting you, then your life, maybe it's not visceral enough, maybe you're not going through like as much adversity as you should be going through, or you're allowing yourself to, and you're sitting in a comfortable place. And the last thing I want to tell my students is that teaching yoga is going to be comfortable. I mean, it's going to be comfortable at times, and there's going to be weeks where you're cruising and every class feels like the best class, but then there's going to be classes where like, what is going on? And it's not, it might be awesome. It might be received as awesome, but inside you're like, you almost get obsessive, which is good, and it's important too. That's another mark of a good teacher, who can get to the point where like they're obsessive and they're like really self-critical, but you don't give in. You listen to that. What is it telling you? And it's not always like, yeah, I need to make that cue perfect, or I need to be more authentic. It's really just just having the feeling of humility and doubt is healthy. Stress can be really healthy, because it's just another mirror, Yeah.
Yeah, and if that voice is there, it's something. It's a signal. And I think that was it for me. I kept thinking about this yoga teacher training, seeing yoga teachers and being, sort of jealous or wanting to be where they were at, or I don't know. So that finally that voice came through clear enough, and maybe it takes that one spark of someone saying something in your class, and then the timing is just right and things are falling into place.
Yeah, and sometimes it happens and you're still feeling like shit. Like, it's perfect, it's awesome, it's like vibrant, and you're like, your jokes are on time and your adjustments are perfect, but then like afterwards you're like, what was that class? It happened to me the other day. I would teach you and Danielle came into class, and I was like thinking in my head, all right, I cannot go past, I have to be on time. And that's all I could think about. And I was like so worried about the being on time, because it's something we've been trying to work on, because I get all crazy. I get put too much stuff in my classes where like, I get inspired, and I'll add, maybe we have time for just like one more malasana, just one little twist in a malasana, it'll blow the fuck up. And then like I'm 2 minutes over, I'm like, fuck those 2 minutes in malasana, so I'm thinking about that. And then she takes my class, and I'm like, fuck, I blew it, dude. Like I there was like certain cues where I felt like, oh no, dude, like that wasn't like what I meant to say, and like that's not, and what was I talking about? Like I went through some spiritual rant that had no relevance, and then Danielle came out of my class, and she's like, Rex, that was the best class I've ever taken from you. I was like, no, it's happening again. Like, because like, and what's crazy about the dichotomy is like, I'm still dissatisfied. Like, she said it was the best class she's ever taken from me, and I'm dissatisfied because my expectations weren't what they thought they were going to be in that instant. So what is that telling me? Like, what is that, like there's a subtle lesson there where, I'm still figuring it out. I'm still, even in the perfection that is my class, I'm still figuring it out in some deep psychological, philosophical way that is slightly out of my grasp, that my experience is telling me I need to focus on. It's like that, to me, is the heart of yoga. To me, that's real yoga right there. That's, yeah.
Yeah. You're learning, so much along the way yourself as a teacher from the students. I completely agree. I had a student that I thought today in my class was not liking the vinyasa flow aspect, and he was the one that came after the class saying, oh my God, I loved that. I just moved into this meditative state. And he was the one I thought didn't love that. So what you assume in your head is the story.
Yeah.
We're proven wrong,
Yeah.
But it's being receptive and open to that, and doing our best, checking ourselves, that, not being ashamed of yourself for being harsh on yourself in that class. And even after the fact, still being hard on yourself. Yeah. Like, okay, now you're able to observe. Now you're able to see and sit with it. And I'd love you to talk a little bit about your style, because I do think it's really unique, and I was really affected and touched by your classes, which is what kept bringing me back. So what has led you, to find your voice and your style as a teacher, and how would you kind of describe that?
Man, that's hard. That's a loaded question, and I guess I'll start with like a lot of my inspirations that I started copying, really, because that's really what it was. Like in the beginning of teaching yoga, like I didn't really know what my voice was. I didn't really understand it, and maybe a lot of people do in the beginning, but I definitely didn't. And I was copying like the cadence of like Steve Hubbard, which is like one of my all-time favorite teachers, and who's still like, I still watch his videos, and like I'm still like, it's fucking downward facing dog, like I can't, like I like, like. And then there was something, Namaste Steve, man, like in his cadence and his charisma, and just the way he was with students. I think copying a certain style of a teacher can be healthy to a point. I think that when you're trying, excuse me, a little burpee, when you're trying to copy someone, I think subconsciously you're also trying to copy everything that's good that you see in that person, not just in like the sound of it, but like the way they are, like their aura, their presence, and like the way they treat people, like the way that Steve Hubbard treated people from my vantage point just felt like so, I don't know, honest and pure, and I wanted to reflect that. And the way I was trying to reflect it was, yeah, his cadence is his delivery, but that's not really exactly what I wanted. Like, I really just wanted to be humble and honest and natural with people. And through copying him, I realized, like, okay, it's not really suiting me to say it like him, but I think, it's giving me more clues to like what I really want, what I want to express. And so that's how I kind of started. So Steve Hubbard, and then I tried to add like a little bit more like of a flowery gesture and flowery like verbiage like Kelly Martin would, and then I would think about like the spiritual kind of delivery and like the overall like all encompassing picture that Jen Richardson would always create in her classes, and this sense of community. And so yeah, those are just a few names that come off my head. And John Oldrow is definitely someone who I admire and I still think about day to day in my teaching, because there's something. I mean, I didn't take that many of John Oldrow's classes, but I spent a lot of time with him. He's a dear friend, and just the way that he thinks about things, and the way he feels about himself, the way he thinks about the yoga community, I share a lot of that, and it's something that like I feel he's honestly trying to express in his yoga way, in his yoga teaching, and in an unabashed, like unapologetic way. It's kind of like, I don't want to speak for John, but like a lot of times when I go to his classes, I feel like it's a big middle finger to the yoga community in like this most beautiful artistic way of like, yes, dude, yes, someone's doing some fucking crazy shit. And like that he's taken, like, I feel almost like a lot of risk in a lot of things that he's doing, but at the same time, like, it's for a really beautiful intention. And so so my style, God, like, when I think about my style, if I could like put it into words, like, it's a combination of so many different teachers, like Joe Barnett, again, another like profound teacher that I've studied under, and I can't, even his cadence is like very like, I catch myself speaking like him when I'm teaching yin, like there's these pregnant pauses in between his words that are just perfectly placed, and it doesn't feel rushed, and then there's something about it that is calming and reminding that this is bigger than what pose this is. There's something that implies in his cadence, in his delivery, and the tone of his voice that tells me that we're not just crafting a pose here. We're crafting, like, I don't know. It's out there, but we're all going toward it together. Yeah, that. So I don't know. That, I guess, like, if I were to think about like my style, my cadence is definitely slower. You could argue, a lot of people would take my class and say like that's not really a vinyasa class. It might be more of a hatha pacing. I like to hold poses for longer. I like to take time to like really feel poses. I don't like to jump from one pose to the other for the sake of warming up to a peak pose all the time, because if one pose isn't amazingly awesome enough, like the peak pose is, it might be a fireworks bang, but like you lost all the experience in all the other poses. So why not take time and breathe in those poses? And that's my style. That's no rules or anything. I'm sure I'll enjoy a lot of classes at a faster pace, or people that go quick, and I'm sure there's an art to that, but that's just the way that I've decided to express the yoga, because that's kind of how I like to digest things. Like, there's the trap, and there's the elbow, and let me just wait. Not yet. Don't say exhale yet, please. Don't do it. and I know Trikonasana is coming, but fucking this extended side angle right now, I just need to like, let me move my hip and then, all right, you could say exhale, then there you go. You know, like that's kind of the self-dialogue in my head. So that's how I kind of like to teach.
And that comes through your classes. I love that. It's such a self-exploratory practice, and it provides so much space for each student in the room to really, I still catch myself thinking of you, or I'll mention you in my class. I'm like, this is the spaceman, you guys might know from Rex's class. So like you said, finding those bits and pieces of the classes, if you're, someone listening, working on crafting your voice, your style, I think initially it is a little mimicry. It is the things you love about the teachers who have influenced you, but then you find what sticks, what doesn't, and find how to put your own spin, your own personality to it, because it's not going to feel authentic and genuine for you if that's all you're doing is the mimicking. Eventually that's going to fade off.
Yeah, it naturally does.
It takes time. It's every class you show up. If you're teaching once a week, it might take a little longer than if you're teaching once a day or 3 times a day or 4 times a day. I think the sooner you jump in and just get the experience and get out there, you'll start carving out that unique space around who you are as a teacher.
Yeah. I agreed. Yeah. And maybe that's even like, mimicry and like copying in the beginning. Maybe that's even like a topic that could be expanded upon on a teacher training, like maybe like mimicry and copying is like something that should be like heralded at least at some point because it does serve a certain purpose and function, like, yeah, it's their voice and cadence, but like, what are you after? Like, dig deeper. Like, what is that behind? Like, you want the love from Steve Hubbard. You want the love that he gives to his students, like it's the cadence and the charisma, but like, what else, dude? Like, go deeper in the yoga, like, yeah, maybe that's a workshop of sorts. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Let's talk about yin a little bit. I haven't talked about yin at all on this program. So for people that maybe are more familiar with, they've taken 1 or 2 yoga classes in a gym or at their studio or in Namasteve's class, and all they've been exposed to is this vinyasa flow style. It's fast, it's upbeat, and they think that's yoga. That's the kind of yoga they need to be practicing. What would you say to someone who hasn't maybe taken a yin or restorative, and what do you think is so beneficial of including that kind of practice as well?
Yeah, yin, there's so many layers to yin that we could go into, but I guess on the very surface, like right away, it targets the connective tissue in the fascia and what Gil Hedley calls the fuzz, or used to call the fuzz. And it's definitely it's not just slow, it's still. You go into a pose and you're trying your best to be still. And right there and then, like to be still in something like a lizard lunge, there's a meditative aspect to that. I don't want to say that yin is different from what we're practicing in vinyasa, because in vinyasa and all those poses and all those paces, they're built in actual yin in there. Like the essence of yin still exists. It's actually like it's more interweaved like a DNA than it is like separate strands or like parallel lines of freeway. It's like when you're in a Warrior 2 and you're coming from a vinyasa flow and there's a moment where you exhale and there's a depth, the quadriceps strong and the shoulders are over the hips, and then there's a subtle stillness there. There's a pause. That right there is, that's yin right there. That's like, there's a subtle, you can tap into really your awareness of all the subtle movements in your biology and in your nervous system and the sweat, and there might be like some kind of, you might be sensitive to some kind of transformative moment, and like a yin based class is really all that. It's like that magnified, that moment for like 60 minutes rather than like, when you're practicing a vinyasa class, it's really distracting to go inhale, left arm toward the sky, exhale, warrior 2, and there's just all this movement. But there are bits, there are opportunities there. So it's all interweaved. And in a yin class, there's vinyasa, there's there's yang going on too. Like you're gonna move, and there's gonna be moments where like you might even sweat, and there might be even like a inadvertent shaking perhaps, and you could consider that like a yang kind of essence. But we're going more spread out, like, and we're gonna like highly define, yang and yin. Yang is life and yin is death. And we this weekend in our workshops, me and Hannah's workshops, we kind of like briefly went over that and really kind of try to explain like the colors and the feelings and the emotions behind yang yoga and this brightness. Sun salutation A, sun salutation B, this bright like like flowers, and then the even the cadence of how you teach is different. Like we might laugh in a yin yoga class and but it's very intimate, it's very quiet. Like I'm a lot of times like I kind of get nervous. There's anxiety building in me, and when I'm teaching yin sometimes, because like man, I need to fill this space with noise, but like I have to honor that yin essence, because and then the vinyasa, the yang is different. Like let's fucking party, like. So that's kind of loose definitions of it, right? I would love to give like a lecture behind. I think that's more like Joe Barnett, my teachers, like MO, and I so yin. If we go deeper in the history of yin, Paul Grilly invented yin, influenced by his learnings from Paulie Zink. It might be Paul or Paulie Zink, and it has a lot of influence from Chinese medicine. There's a lot, if you're familiar with the meridians and the way the chi moves after and during poses and prior to poses. There's a whole study available for you. You get really deep in that subtle chi movement. And then you can go more scientific. You can think about it as like piezoelectricity running across the tissue after you release a big yin yoga pose, and like that feeling of sensation. And then you can watch that with pinprick sensitivity. And one of the experiences that could be more available in a yin yoga class is that pinprick sensitivity, because you're watching the biology, like the miracle of your own biology at work so closely, and you can feel the fascia shift. Like sometimes you do a yin yoga pose, like you're in pigeon, and you feel like this whole plane of your glute like slide and release like out of tension, and you're like, oh my god, what is that? And then because you're looking at so closely, you start to look at the other subtle bodies closely as well. So not only is like the movement of the fascia so vivid to you, but it's like, how happy or sad are you really right now? And that might come up. And like, is there like an underlying feeling of resentment to somebody, or is there like is there something that you're dissatisfied about your job, or is there like, how do you feel about your relation? All these very subtle things that you consider yourself, right? These are all things that we know that are you. We suggest that that's the astral body, another body. So you get the physical body, you get the astral body. And when we do these things in a yin yoga class called a rebound, where you close your eyes and you kind of watch this play out, whatever comes up, and you're open to it. And it's a practice. Sometimes we're closed for a whole class, and it takes 2 or 3 classes for you to like kind of break through and like, oh fuck my dad, and maybe, and coincidingly, like maybe you released your low back in a way where you never released it before, and like it took like such a delicate awareness and sensitivity to your own self, your own body. And maybe it's related. Maybe it's related to the meridians. Maybe it's related to the movement of the chi. Maybe something unlocked that was blocked at some chakra level. And maybe I think that's the best way I can kind of describe the yin experience.
Yeah. Oh, you make me want to take one of your yin classes ASAP. I
want to take
miss.
it. I listen to myself. I want to take it. I don't know if
Yes.
that's what it's like.
Yeah. So do you find it easy to make time for yoga and meditation for yourself?
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult. I think I demo more than most yoga teachers in the. I mean, when I take classes, a lot of times I don't see anyone demoing, but I demo a lot because like it's hard for me to like feel the miracle of my own biology, like teaching a lot and like I gotta get in there and I don't know, like some people I know, I have a lot of peers and friends that like you can't demo, like, and like I don't know, I kind of like I reserve the idea to kind of like, yeah, you can, because when you're in the pose, like you can like you're feeling it with them. There's some kind of like, you know, we're gonna take this ride together almost, like, you know, it's not just me giving you the pose, it's us, like, let's go. Some people, you know, people I respect feel like there needs to be some kind of hierarchy there, but I don't know, the more and more I just want to dissolve the hierarchy, the more and more I feel like fuck the hierarchy. And but I, you know, all respect. Yeah, it's very hard to find time.
Yeah. And I think when I was when I first did my teacher training, I think it's a tendency to want to demo more, especially when you first start. At least I felt that way, that like I didn't feel comfortable teaching initially unless I was doing it in my body. Right. But I think, and I remember having a student in one of my early on classes saying how much he loved the fact that I was demoing and showing. So I was feeling ashamed that I was showing and demoing and doing it in my body. And meanwhile, someone in the back of the class told me he loved the fact that I did it. And I just had another student post, or not a student, I'm sorry, another teacher, a friend of mine who moved to another city, post about this topic on Facebook that, you know, she was auditioning for a studio and they said they didn't like the fact that she didn't demo at all. And every single teacher in their studio demos.
Yeah.
So I think it's a personal preference. And if you can keep an eye on students while you're also demoing, making sure it's a safe environment, you sort of find that cadence of, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And even when you're demoing as much as you like, you know, I can feel great in my body if I've been demoing in a few classes in a day or a week, but there's something so juicy about allowing yourself that time, like really giving yourself that time for a full yoga class.
Yeah, there's nothing like a full practice. There's really not.
Especially with a teacher you love that you know is just going to take you there. When I get to your class, I'm just, my heart melts. I'm so happy. And I get to practice. Juan, my fiance, who was on the podcast last week, will come take a lot of my classes. Yeah. And it's such a different energy, him being in the room taking my class versus when we get to take your class or someone else's class together next to one another, you know, and have that experience.
I love when you guys come in together. I mean, that's like, you know, for me, like when I see it, just gives me like a nostalgia, really. And like, I love that. That's really cool. And the way you guys are together when you're in class, it's a beautiful thing. And it's so fitting that, like, you know, you guys are like doing the yoga thing together. I love that. You know, and I don't know why, like, I'm like so surprised by it, because like I'm not. It's like my fiance is also a yoga teacher, you know, like, but that's how powerful it is, because it's like it's very rare, you know. It's rare to see like yoga practice is fucking like, you know, there's people that practice yoga and it's like a secret, like a love, and that like they still like kind of like, you know, he likes to practice, but it's not like he rather like rock climb, you know, like, and like that's a thing. And like, but I love yoga, and like that there's something sacred and like really special, and it's rare to find someone that loves yoga as much as you love yoga, you know. It's just such a rare thing, and it's beautiful to see every time you come in. So I'm so happy. That's cool. Yeah. Would you want to talk a little bit about, you know, both being yoga teachers, having this world together today? You guys taught a workshop together. I think that's really awesome. And for anyone out there that, you know, is wonder what that's like, they see maybe couples out there, you know, glamorous yoga teacher life, doing the workshops, the retreats, this, that. But there's a lot that goes into it. So it is that work together. I mean, it's a constant partnership and a constant. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's all like it's all good. It is good, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And for me and Hannah, we started it exactly at the same time, really, and going through the yoga industry and the cutthroat business that the yoga industry can be. Like, there were times of like jealousy and times of like, like just indifference and battle and oh man, how are we gonna work? This is like, this is really hard. And I don't know. I don't know when it switched or where the point where like that stopped, but that kind of ego side of our own ambition kind of went away, and we started doing more things together, and I think that helps a lot. I think like, something that we share, we have a love for really profoundly in like the same visceral ways that the rare visceral ways that we came upon yoga, like me being an alcoholic and her having an eating disorder. Like, this is yoga pulled us both out of this place. And so, I think that having this grander mission of like serving yoga, God, this is gonna digress into something that I can't talk about, but serving yoga to these populations became more important than the ego. And we anytime we start to slip into argument or slip into like some kind of disease with the way that we're teaching, even during that day, like, I don't like the way that you said that, and like, the car ride's gonna be long, like, we remember that, like, oh shit, like, there's a higher purpose to all this than this like ego right here, right now. Like, if we can push through this, like, who knows, like, how many people who've been suffering from the same things that we've been suffering from can heal from this. And so I think that's like a big thing with me and Hannah, is that like we share this love for yoga, and like we've healed from yoga in a really hard like place. Like, I don't know if I said this before during like we talked earlier about the transformation from practitioner to teacher, but before I was a practitioner, when I went to that first class, I was active alcoholic and super and and it's crazy because like, as I continue to practice yoga and teach yoga, like, the more and more like I realize how important that time was for me, because I'm talking about how it connects me and my life partner in such a grandiose visceral way that I don't know if I'll ever meet anyone like that that's like this. But I had to be an alcoholic too for us to like, gel in the ways, and like finally, like, who knows, if I wasn't an alcoholic, then maybe one argument and like, fuck this, like, like, fuck this, no, there's a higher power, dude. Like, there's more people suffering from our shit that we need to make this work,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big thing. We love exploring the hard questions, and I think maybe because me and Hannah have like, we've had a habit of like diving real dark, and so asking those hard questions are like necessary questions for us to like, so we like have this kind of muscle, or like, like, how critical do we really want to be? How if I wasn't used to that always going, like, this not self-critical, but like critical in like the really hard sensitive topics, the hard sensitive topics that a lot of people don't want to discuss right away, like, like in all, and maybe at a dinner table, a lot of the things that we talk about on the dinner table, it's like, do you guys want to talk about that right now? It's like, yeah, no, it's totally okay. Yeah, like, it's like fucking talking about the weather at this point, like, how how sensitive of topics do we want to get? And it's like, yeah, we're churning them out so we can go there again, like this place, this ascension, not that we can bring everyone to with us, that all the alcoholics and eating disorder people can join us, and we have to have these topics come up all the time. So yeah, we met in at the grotto. And I've said this to Matt before, the owner of the grotto, but I said, like, like every time I come here, this is like, this is where I found like the love of my life, and this is like church to me, this is like homecoming every time I walk in these doors, and yeah, that's kind of how we met. And she took my class, I took her class, we talked shit about each other, and one day I don't know, it was weird. Our courtship was unconventional and strange, and I think maybe just because we're unconventional and strange, maybe, and yeah, we continue to support each other, and more and more these days we're trying to move as a unit versus like try like anytime I do a yoga project or something like that, or I discuss a yoga project, I always have her, how is she going to be involved in this, what can she or rather what can this like add to what our partnership is trying to ascend to, right? Like, because if it doesn't reflect like the ultimate goal of, like, for us right now, the ultimate goal is like spreading this to the least fortunate of us in the alcohol, eating disorder kind of communities. And they're not communities, they're all scattered, like, alone, trying to figure out for themselves. How is this project going to feed that? And if they're not receptive, is it going to be worth? And I'm sure it will. It's almost every project can be, but like, that's kind of what I think about. And in thinking that way, like, I think that feeds our relationship. Like, oh, dude, like, baby, like, what if we did this Twitch thing for this studio, and like we promoted it for alcohol and eating disorder yoga for all, like some kind of like that, and that kind of feeds our relationship as well.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Remembering the why.
Yeah.
And the how it helped you, and bringing it back to that. And if I can help one person that was in the position I was in 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 days ago, and share something, a nugget of information. That's a big inspiration why I wanted to do this podcast, to share amazing stories like yours and real, authentic, genuine, just histories of people and where they're at today. And one of my favorite wisdom books is The 4 Agreements. And one of the 4 agreements is do your best. So always showing up to do your best. And I think that partnership, it's going to be one of the hardest partnerships. Your partner, your life partner, that's going to be one of the most difficult relationships you ever have. Juan and I were just talking about that, especially if you're on this journey together and you know where she's at and you're kind of going through similar things in your own transformation as a yoga teacher, and maybe having a good day, maybe having a bad day, but always knowing, hey, we have each other's back, and bringing it back and doing your best and checking each other and remembering, okay, this is what it's about. It's,
Absolutely. I mean, I think that you guys are going to share a lot of this experience, but when your significant other is also a yoga teacher, it's like really refreshing to come in and like, whatever like ailed you that day, they're going to know like instantly. There's no explanation that needs to be had, like whether it's like a student that was suffering from this or that, and then they're like, they don't even have to speak, really, they know, and you could see it in their eyes, like, and that there's something priceless about that. Like, if I had to explain, like, oh dude, like my student, fucking her mom died in the fucking like God, it would be exhausting, because we go through that every day, like we're part counselor, we're part DJ, we're part all this, like
yeah.
So yeah, it's good.
And what would you say if, this is something you're exploring on your own, how to reach those communities? So yeah, I mean, how would you recommend going about that if that's something you're passionate about as a yoga student or a teacher, and wanting to impact those communities that really could benefit so much from yoga?
Yeah, that's a question that I'm still trying to figure out myself. For me, God, I ran into a really like fortunate situation where I was able to take yoga for free. I mean, not for free, I don't want to call it free, but work for trade. And not everyone has. I mean, some of these classes, $22 a class, and for someone who's really like self-defeated, someone sees that price and is really like, they look at that sign and look away, and they continue their walk toward the bar, or to continue their own self-destructive path. And I'm trying to figure that out every day. I hope to interview someone that's gonna that's gonna give me that answer. But there's a lot of stuff in the works right now for me and Hannah that we're aggressively pursuing, and I hope the next time we talk about this on this podcast that I could talk more freely about it. But we'll just say that this is our ultimate goal, I think, for right now. Me and Hannah, we're aggressively trying to meet the need and to give this and serve that community. And I think we've come up with really creative ways to do so. And yeah, maybe in a month's time, if we hop back onto this podcast, we can laugh about this one. So yeah.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to talk next time and to reveal. So stay tuned. It's cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You really, put a piece of your heart out here. And I hope everyone listening knows how amazing and special Rex is. I'm so grateful to have you here on the other side, the other mic. So thank you so much. It's been really amazing.
So grateful, so grateful. And yeah, I'm so proud of you. And from those days when you used to take class with me and I don't know. I'm very grateful. This is really cool. Thank you.
Well, just a couple last questions. I feel like we've dove deep in this conversation. We'll definitely return and talk some more. But yeah, for you, how do you find balance? And, in honor of the podcast, Yoga for Balance, what does balance look like to you?
I feel like balance a lot of times will come to you if you surrender. And that sounds so unpragmatic, but in the way where like balance is kind of this force that we're not really in control of, because it's always going to happen, right? Like balance is coming always, but there's something that you might be holding on to or not allowing that if you let go of that or if you hang on to something, maybe balance is just going to come right in, you kind of open the floodgate that balance surrounds us. The equanimity of nature is always trying to self-impose itself on you. And whatever you're holding on to, maybe, I feel imbalanced in my practice. I wish I could practice more. Maybe really what it is I need to stop playing video games and let go of video games. It could be something like that, and that's very like superficial, but maybe for some of us it can be deeper and deeper and deeper in this surrender to balance. Yeah.
I like that, surrender.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, last thing, is there one tip you could tell people listening to do today, do tomorrow, just start so that they can surrender, find that balance? Is there something, an actual practice that I know you incorporate a lot of breath work, meditation, clearly promote yoga, but is there one thing maybe someone hasn't tried that's listening that could just make a big shift for them or a little shift?
Off the top of my head, I would say Wim Hof, but that's because I'm a fan, and that's like I really love the after experience of practicing deep, crazy breathing, Wim Hof breathing, and maybe that's something that people can go look up and hang on to. But really, like, that's a question that I'm looking for too. I'm waiting for someone to be like, yo, this is the one thing. But the more and more like I seek that one thing, the more and more I find that like that is really not gonna come, and maybe for good. Maybe that's a good thing that not one thing comes. Yeah. um I would suggest to someone looking for that one piece of advice that know that there that one piece of advice is really not going to come, that like we started this conversation, it's always constantly evolving. Like the reason why I practice yoga yesterday is going to be completely different of why I practice yoga tomorrow. You know, it might be a physical thing, it might be an emotional thing, it might be a spiritual thing. The reason why I teach yoga changes, and it's I don't want to call it messy, but it's dynamic. It's a life of its own. And like to surrender to that is maybe also in line with the question of balance. You know, it's like, oh, like whatever that is, it's speaking to you, go with that.
Love that. I think one of my directors in Ecuador, I did my 300-hour training outside of Quito, Ecuador, at a school called Durga's Tiger School. I'm actually going to be speaking of the founder of that school soon. She's amazing.
Whoa.
She incorporates a lot of arts and music and shamanism and cosmovision and all these amazing aspects. And one of my favorite mentors in that program was a musician, the husband of our shaman, Tati, who we worked with. And he did a workshop on music. And, you know, with yoga, there's a lot of sound healing. And I love music. Like you said, you're a part-time DJ. One of my favorite things is doing my music research and just listening and hearing a new song and just knowing that is going to my next playlist. I need to create a new playlist right now around that song. And I had him teaching a workshop about music. And in that workshop, he had made a comment about, you know, making music for the fact of how it makes him feel. Like he makes music because he loves the way making music sounds. And it just made, it was such a subtle shift to me because I had always been so intimidated to start my own journey. And I have a ukulele hanging on the wall here of playing music, but I was always so in my head about, well, what will it sound like? Who's going to care to hear it? Or what will I do with it? Well, what does it matter what you do with it? That was a really big aha moment for me, of just doing it for the fact of doing, and for how it makes you feel. So if you're, maybe being called to teach yoga, and it's just because you want to teach yoga, you want to live that yoga, and you love it so much that you know how deeply and profoundly it's impacted you, maybe you can be that voice for someone else, and don't overthink of it. Yeah. Well, Rex, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for everything you do. You've been such an amazing mentor to me, an amazing teacher to me. So just thank you. Thank you for your work.
You're an awesome student, Heather. You and Juan, and I'm so excited to continue to watch you guys blossom, and I'm around, I'm around.
Yeah, where can people find you and tune in and check out what you're doing?
My website's danceclimbyoga.com. That has my weekly schedule on there, and any updates that's worth mentioning, definitely gonna find them on there. There are websites that are shortly gonna come out in the near future that we're excited to share. You could find me on Instagram. I rarely post on there, but there's some bits and pieces of me on there. Really, if you find me in a class and come up and talk to me, that's really the best way. That's what I appreciate the most, and that's it.
Thank you so much, Rex.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you.
And thank you at home for listening. I'm your host, Heather Jurdy, on the Yoga for Balance podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen and help the show grow by leaving a star rating and review while you're there. Thanks, and until next time.